All right, Emily, I'm gonna go ahead and let you come up here.
And do I just click these on this?
Yeah, so let's, does that work?
Yeah.
And then I would go up here to make it full screen right there. All right, you see that? And then, yeah, just click on those three.
Yeah, okay.
Awesome. All right, you can go ahead and get started.
Okay. So the topic I researched in my journal article is the role of nutrition in performance enhancement and post-exercise recovery. So there are a few authors in this peer-reviewed article, which are Catherine Olvera, Jasmine and Towson, Richard J. Swift, Camilla Ornhurst. So my research question is, how does the timing of post-exercise of macronutrient intake and beverage intake influence muscle recovery and as well as performance in athletes? So the background. There are two key aspects between nutrition and physical performance, which are both enhancement of athletic capabilities and post-exercise recovery, which is super important as an athlete. And it is important to understand the impact of our dietary choices on our bodies, so that we can fuel and repair itself based on what we intake. And researchers wanted to study this to know what athletes, depending on high intensity or low intensity, and how nutrition affects their body. So the purpose of this study was to determine the effect of nutrition on post-exercise and muscle recovery, like I said before. And there are three main key influences about that, which is replenish glycogen, decrease protein breakdown, and increase protein synthesis. So this is the introduction to importance of nutrition on exercise. So dietary strategies enhance performance, which include optimizing intakes of macronutrients, and fluids, with which all three of those have a huge influence with when you take it. And these strategies vary according to the athlete's sport, personal goals, and practicalities. So every dietary strategy is different depending on your sport, whether you play soccer, football, runner, or wrestler. So maximizing muscle glycogen. So carb loading is super important in this process, and it aims to maximize an athlete's muscle glycogen, which stores prior to endurance exercise lasting longer than 90 minutes. And the benefits of that, the research talked about how it delays fatigue for about 20%, is what athletes reported. And it also improved performance for about 2 to 3%. And then for sustained or intermittent exercise athletes, the recommended intake of carbs is 10 to 12 grams per kilogram of body mass per day. And exercise shorter than 90 minutes, 7 to 12 grams of carbs is recommended based on your body mass. So why are carbs important and why should we eat? So carbs eaten prior and after exercise have shown to increase muscle glycogen stores and carbohydrate oxidation, which lower exhaustion and improve performance. And then athletes also took vitamin D, and there were a few beneficial impacts on that were super essential, such as like bone health, controlled calcium homeostasis, muscle strength, regulation of the immune system, and cardiovascular health. So taking vitamin D was able to help like repair those muscles that have been working during exercise, whether it was high intensity or low intensity. And then post-exercise recovery. So without the adequate of recover certain like carbs, proteins, fluids, and electrolytes post-exercise show to have a huge effect on performance. And the muscle glycogen synthesis. So consuming carbohydrates immediately after post-exercise was a strategy to maximize rates of muscle glycogen synthesis. And it was recommended for those athletes to also consume high GI foods post-exercise, so that blood glucose can go up and you can burn those fats and carbs. And then protein consumption also enhances NPS, net protein balance, and it also increases mitochondrial protein fraction. So when both a protein and a carbohydrate supplement was provided, it showed immediate effect 3 hours after cycling exercise versus taking it like a little longer. And it showed to increase like protein synthesis for over 3 hours. The fluids and electrolyte balance. So the research also talked about how important it is to intake fluids after exercise so that you can resume your body to normal hydration. So when you exercise, you lose a lot of sweat and water in your body. So making sure that you intake the right amount of fluids and electrolyte after exercise is super important to get your body back to balance and able back to where you were before. So here's the table that shows the dietary supplement used in high performing athletes. So it varies from different sports. Some footballers were studied. There were some Olympic athletes, and there was also like college sport athletes, and it surveyed both male and females. And then it showed what type of dietary supplement they took. For example, it was very common for footballers to take like different sports drinks, vitamin C and calcium, whereas like Olympic athletes reported to take more like vitamins, like vitamin C and more proteins. And then college athletes reported to use more different supplements, as well as multivitamins, vitamin C, sports drinks, and as well as a lot of protein. And then they also gave the reason of why they used the dietary supplement. So it was showed that performance, a lot of them stated that performance went up, whether that was by 40% or some reported as low as 50%. And then some athletes also didn't report a reason for a dietary supplement. They just took it to take it. And so the results on that table showed that athletes consuming macronutrients and supplements enhanced their performance, increased their strength, muscle power, and improved overall general health. And like I said before, some athletes took supplements for pleasure or didn't report a reason for taking it. So strengths and weaknesses in that. So the strengths was that there was a large number of athlete population being studied and both genders were included. And then weaknesses on that was that it was kind of difficult to compare some studies due to the differences in criteria used to define dietary supplement and intake, and as well as the disparity in the population studied. And so based on all of that information, the conclusion was that nutrition does have a key role in both performance enhancement and post-exercise recovery. And this is only possible through proper nutrient intake and hydrating based on your sport. And it also allowed athletes to unlock their full potential and expedite their recovery process through it all. And yeah, that was my citation.
Thank you. Nice. So question, you were an exercise biz on the.
Yeah, I know, that kind of helped.
Did it help?
Yeah, I understand, because yesterday we talked like about glucose and exhaustion and stuff. So reading that article and learning about that class kind of like made it easier to understand like why like glucose and insulin is so important, because like while our muscles are working, we need energy to put back into the cells. Yeah.
So could you explain that kind of what we talked a little bit more in depth of what we talked about in exercise biz and recover, and maybe just glycogen, because it looked like based on your results there was a could you go to the carb loading results? Yeah.
Oh.
One more, where it says 20%.
This one?
Yeah. So explain that a little bit more, because I came in and I said, okay, guys, we need to figure out how my kid can stay in a game for 2 hours and still have the energy he needs to continue at maximum performance.
Yeah.
right?
So based on like on the article that I read, it was the athletes that were studied for this delayed of fatigue was runners, so like cyclists or runners, and a lot of them like doubled carbs and glucose because like when they're running, it they lose a lot of insulin, and so then doubling glucose or insulin levels helped repair muscles and those cells that are working a lot easier. And it showed that it delayed fatigue by 20%. And it also improved performance. But as a soccer player, I kind of agree with this because we run for like 45 minutes straight with no break. So when you said that your son was like in the whole game the whole time, I kind of related to that because with soccer we have like no breaks whatsoever. And so then it's really easy to get fatigued within like the first 5 to 10 minutes. And try to like get back to like our normal body is kind of hard.
Yeah. Cammy, can you ask your question?
How much protein should an athlete consume post-exercise to obtain like optimal recovery? Because you talked about like the importance of protein.
Yeah, so in this article, it didn't give like a exact amount of protein, but as I was reading the protein part, it just talked about how it is important to consume protein before and after exercise, so that because you need protein to like regenerate those muscles and like bone health and increase that. So taking, I think it said like about 20 grams, 10 to 20 grams of protein. But it also depends whether you're a high intensity sport athlete or a low intensity. It talked about how obviously when you're high intense, you're gonna want to consume more protein than low intense just because you're burning more. So it just depends on your sport.
I got a lot of questions with more specifics about carb loading. Braden, can you ask it?
Yeah, so you said for exercise lasting longer than 90 minutes, you should aim for 10 to 12 grams of carbs per kilogram. How's that consumption spread out? Is it like the days leading up or hours before?
Yeah, so in the article, it talked about how this was, it was 10 to 12 grams after exercise. So it talked about how you should consume that amount. It said 48 hours after. So it's not like you don't have to take it like as soon as you're done working out. It can be like, it just has to be like before your next workout. So for example, if I have practice today, like at 6 p.m., I have to consume that amount of protein before my next practice.
What about carbs?
For carbs, it kind of was the same, but carbs you have to consume a little like more right after instead of like waiting for it. For carbs, I think it said 24 to 26 hours is what athletes prove to show improvement in performance.
And that was before. So
Yeah.
protein 48 up to 48 hours after.
And then carbs.
26
Yeah.
to 24.
Because it said that like, because they also studied athletes who like didn't consume any protein for like 2 to 3 days, and their results were obviously a lot lower. So then consuming protein or carbs like right after or in that span of 24 hours or 48 hours and showed a lot of more improvement than waiting.
Looks like Braden has another question.
Yeah, so on this slide specifically, it says carb loading prior to endurance.
Mhm.
So my question was like before exercise, like how long before?
Yeah, so before it said that it was kind of the same. You just have to take it like not right before practice, obviously, but you have to take it like within, I would say like 12 hours before. Both before and after exercise showed kind of the same results. So just taking it within that span.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, well, thank you. I'll stop sharing and I'll stop recording. You're good. Oh, yeah, you're like, oh, I don't know. Yeah. Okay, let us stop recording. Right, I'm gonna